Hi, and welcome to the January Craftology Box. This is the first one of 2020, and I want to just go through a couple things. In your Craftology Box, you have 2 sheets of all the papers, except the coordinating, which I'll go through, but we had a few variances, so I just want to go through that. Your Craftology Box may have the Prima flowers that do have some gingham in them, gingham and solid, or you may have the pink roses that you'll see Kim using on her tutorial. Actually, hers are just a little different. They are like this, but they do have some white on the edges. Prima, we had ordered. They ran out, but they made good. So we were so happy because we got all the pink that we needed. Very pink, very pretty. Then it was the holiday season, and when we ordered in from Ranger, we ordered in keyholes. There were 3 different keyholes that your kits would have had. They didn't arrive in time. That's okay. We're going to put them in your March box. So with your subscriptions, you'll receive this with the March box, and we'll just use it there. And for your projects, you are able to create my album in a box, and the one sheet has your step-by-step photos so that you can look. I don't have the exact cutting guide on those. We'll do those in the video, because you may want a larger border depending on the color cardstock you've chosen, or you may want it to fit perfect. Everybody has a different taste, and also our cutting is different. So maybe you don't cut yours exactly like mine, and if I give you a 4x5, tell you to cut 3 7/8 by 4 7/8, it may not fit yours. So I do tell you to measure as we go. And for mine, you want to take out 1 sheet of each paper, plus the blue, the red, and the pink dots. So I will be using those throughout the album. And if you'll have enough to also create with the additional sheets. You have 5 sheets of lightweight chipboard. You'll be creating Kim's banner and my album in a box. And the nice thing about our kits, we're not just giving you an album and saying, here, mat this. You're creating from scratch. So you get to know step by step, and with our videos, how to create your projects. This is going to be just beautiful to hang up for your Valentine decorations. Then you're going to have the cutting and scoring guide. This goes with my album in a box. We'll go through the step by step on all the pieces that I've cut. Now for the kits. That's one thing I want to emphasize, is if you're going to make the album in a box first, that you may want to wait and embellish after you see what Kim has used, and you'll be able to get both out of there though. And not only will you be able to get both projects, you may find that you want to do our other designer projects. So on the back are YouTube channels. Kathy Lee will be doing cards. You can use your scraps for that. Lori Thompson and Bobby Weaver. You may find a different project that you like, or you may also want to buy more of the Valentine's paper, because it's now on the website, so that you can create other items. This is such a lovely paper. I just love it. So to get started, what we're going to do is take out the red. It's actually called Roses and Lace. Carnation Blush Dots and Aqua Powder Dots. I'll be using those. We're going to use the red on the inside of our lid. And for the front of my box, I chose my Valentine. It's Roses Are Red. Be Mine will be on the back, and we will be using some of the back side, and I did the sides of our box. So you can follow along with your, well, of course you're going to follow along with me, with your photos as I give you measurements for cutting your matting. Or you can just create the box and then go back and mat according to pictures. I do measure, and I do an 1/8 of an inch border for my pattern paper. And we're going to set these aside. My cut aparts are on the back of my pile, so I just move those to the back side. We do the matting as we go on our cover, because it makes it easier to work on it flat. So we're going to get started with the cutting guide. In your cutting guide, for my project, you will need 2 sheets of the lightweight chipboard. And I have pre-cut the chipboard and our pages. So we're going to go over those together. For the box is constructed out of 2 sheets of 12 by 12 cardstock. And I did start with 25 sheets of the black and 6 of the white. For the box, you're going to start again with 11 3/4 by 12. You want to cut 2 of those. These are the actual box construction. Now the scoring is on each block. There are some scoring that you'll see different in the video because to explain it, if you're a new crafter and you're just doing this for the first time, it may have thrown you off. So I left those off so I could better explain them in the video. Then your box lid. Your box lid is 1 sheet of 7 7/8 by 11 5/8. Then we will be creating hinge, 5 7/8 by 9 1/2. So our pages are going to be 6 inches wide, 7 1/2 long. We're going to start with the scoring of the 11 3/4 by 12 inch pieces. I've already scored 1. And when you put if you're using especially the score pal that has the closed end, the 12 inch may be a closed fit. It's fine. I want you can trim it down and make sure it's 12, but it may buckle a hair, but you're fine. So what we're going to do, we're going to start with scoring as the instructions say with the 12 inch at the top of the scoreboard. Your scoring marks are going to be the 2 3/4, 9 1/4, and then 1 and 9. But let me give you kind of a little hint here. It's actually 2 3/4 on 3 sides. So you could score it 2 3/4, 2 3/4, 2 3/4, and you'll have the same. But I wanted to have it written out just in case you don't like to score that way. So we're going to start with the 12 inch is at the top of our scoreboard. So your paper's all the way across the top at 2 3/4. 9 1/4. You'll do both pieces the exact same way. Then we're going to turn. The 11 3/4 is now at the top. We will score it 1. And we will score it 9. Now this is where I didn't want to write this out because it may have thrown a lot of people off. You'll notice there's a 1 inch lip here, or 1 inch score mark. We're going to be folding that over. And the thing is, it gives a nice finished edge. So you don't have this raw edge on the tops and the bottoms. So this does get cut away, the 4 corners, but I do want to be able to fold some of it up to finish this edge off. So what I'm going to do is go 9 at the 9. Now 9 1/2. And I'm going to take it right to that score line. Or you can cut it just to that first score line. And you'll want to just kind of do it on both if you're really good at finding it on your scoreboard. If you're not, you can also just cut it because it doesn't have to be exact. You don't have to do it here. Well, yes, you do have to do it here. I'm sorry, because we're going to take 1/2 inch to the first score line and then the bottom one. Or you can turn it over. Or like I said, you can measure. You don't even have to measure. You can just cut it. It doesn't have to be exact. I've already done the scoring on this one at 2 3/4, 9 1/4, 1 and 9. So now I'm just going to turn it and go ahead and I'll do my 1/2 inch, my 9 1/2. And 1/2 inch. Whichever you're comfortable doing. Now with my bone folder, don't worry about these little 1/2 inch. We're not going to be folding them right now. But we're going to burnish these score lines. After your score lines are all burnished, you'll see that your 6 3/8 by 7 7/8 chipboard fits in there very nice. Now, if it happens to be too long for whatever reason or wide, you can trim it down, but it should be just fine. Let me show you on the original box. So you'll see there's going to be no fear in seeing any of the chipboard. And I'll tell you why. I will be using, which I don't do a lot, before we put this down, I am going to use a permanent marker. Like I said, I'm not a big advocate of this because I like to have my work just finished net, but I am going to take this around these sides. So if you have a permanent black marker, you might want to do that. But I'll do it with you before we add our score tape and things to it. But now we want to do some cutting. We're going to cut this square out and this square. Now you can see I didn't quite get 1/2 inch here, so I'll just be doing some free cutting. Mine's not quite that 1/2 inch. Same here, which is okay. Like I said, it didn't have to be perfect, but I wanted to show you you could do that. This is the bottom of our box and where our hinges will sit. It's very important you do not miter anywhere this bottom piece. I want you to cut straight up, all the way up. And I come to the inside of the score line so I can cut away any of the, you know, bumpy marks you get. Now, you can either follow that score line. You could also, if you want it to be perfect, but it's going to be hidden under paper, you could also measure it with your ruler, but I'm just going to cut. I'm going to fold this up. Because this piece now, you do want to angle it on the sides. This can be a little tight. I'm going to fold this over this way to give me the angle I need to really clean that off. And I'll show you that again. So I just fold this down. I fold this over. Using the edge of my paper as the guide, I clean up the edge. This one's just fine. And if I'm going too slow, the nice thing about the video, you can stop it and then you can fast forward. But if you are a beginner, I am going slow. So once again, on the inside of that score line, let's go ahead and cut straight up. Mine's too short. That's not quite 1/2 inch. I'm just going to eyeball it. And it doesn't even have to be straight because it will be hidden under our pattern paper. Then I'm going to fold this bottom up. For me, I'm going to flip it over. And then I fold this. And then see, I'm able to have that straight line and just get rid of the excess. And then the outside. The top. Again, we don't have to keep this straight because this doesn't even get seen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to the inside at an angle. I'm going to come over here to this 1 inch piece at an angle. I'm going to angle the outside. I'm going to just cut it in half. Leave this the width of 1 inch because you want it to hide the chipboard nicely. So once again, we'll angle on the inside of the 1 inch. That's what our piece looks like. So I'm going to repeat it with our second piece. This is done exactly the same way, so you can definitely fast forward. If you need to watch it again, I'll be doing it step by step the exact same way. Okay, let's start with the bottom. Come to the inside of that score line just barely. And let's just cut it down. I'm going to fold this over. Okay, I'm going to fold this piece over. We're going to get rid of that. And I can straighten up the top. Now let's repeat on the opposite side. Cut this off. Let's angle the sides. These little pieces, it really is best to get them up because these will get stuck in your glue and then you'll be unhappy. There we go. Top, once again, you'll be able to angle from the inside, angle to the right, cut it in half or so. Oops, should have angled that. And the outside. I don't know what Wilbur's dancing around about. So I just use packing tape. It's just so easy to go through and pick up all your scraps that way. And then they all nice and tidy into the garbage can. Okay. We are now, after we go along the side with our permanent marker, we'll be laying these down. You can use score tape sheets, or your art glitter glue. I will be using the score tape sheets. Before I do, I'm just going to take my marker. You could use a black ink. And all we have to do are these two long sides and one short side, which is the bottom. Even though we cover the bottom up again, I went ahead and did it. Don't worry about being neat because it won't be seen. But it really is a lot easier to do at this step. You could use paint. You can use ink. Black ink works great too. If you have more of a permanent. Well, to be honest with you, it really does all become permanent after a while. I've never had it not be. Looks like a kid drew on it, but that's all you need to do. I would love to see the lightweight chipboard in black. That would be awesome. But again, when you cut into it, even our black chipboard, you still get a little bit, even though it's a solid on our black, it still has that variation in color, the core. So having a good black markers, I'm finally giving in. It's worth having one. Like I said, neatness does not count. You'll take your messiest side and lay it down. Unless you're probably using white paper, I should tell you it may count. The bottom of your box, we actually put a piece of a paper on the bottom so you don't have to worry. And one of those is for the top of the box. So now using your score tape sheet. My box fell on the floor. Let me grab it. Now just use a blade, box knife, or I just happened to grab my Cricut because I bought the new maker. Love it. And this was just sitting there. Pretty nice little tool, actually. Okay. And basically, you can see this won't cover the whole thing. And I don't have any scraps, so I will be using 2 full sheets. These will get used on another project. That's the nice thing. It never gets wasted. When cutting, just push against your chipboard or your cardstock. And that really does keep it in line. Pushing your chipboard, you can put some pressure there, and you'll notice how much easier it is to cut. I'm the worst straight cutter in the world, so trust me, it works. Get rid of all these little pieces before we put it down because we don't want any lumps or bumps. We do want to put this down first. The piece that I did not put, the black marker, will go at the top. It's going to sit in the center, and that's what gives our box all that structure and makes it feel heavier, and it really is durable. I know my sample has been on the floor more than once. It went sliding off the table, and it's just fine. All right, let's clean up anything underneath there because you don't want any lumps or bumps. This will fit, should fit pretty close. Just a tiny bit of border around, enough that your moving parts are going to move, because that's the part where we're going to be putting our hinges on. Of course, the sides. Now, we're going to just burnish those over the top. Now, the next piece, before we put this down, we're actually going to do just a tiny bit of trimming because you want your box. Let me show you. So when it comes together, I didn't like anything hanging over this edge. So they were pretty close and it was hanging a little bit. So I'm going to show you. I'm going to trim our next piece down just a tiny bit. But now what we're going to do is we're going to fold all of these pieces over, creating our finished edges and hiding the chipboard. So go ahead and take time to burnish these flat. because now you can check and see that everything is sitting within the score lines, nice, tidy, and neat. If you need to do any trimming, you can do it now. I don't need to, so I can just use my art glitter glue. Having a little trouble with this bottle. It's getting time to clean the tip. And I just use my pipe cleaner to do that. And let's pull that right over the top. Nice clean edge. Let's do the same for these two. The bottom. We're also going to do the matting before we put our box together because it's so much simpler to work with each individual piece. Flat. And also one thing. Now you can see how nice and clean and closed your tops and bottoms are. So let's take this one. I'm going to trim this up a little more. So do any trimming you want to do on the flaps. Now, using the scoreboard, so make sure you have a good blade in here. You may even want to test it with maybe a scrap piece because this is going to be the outer edge and you don't want it to be straggly looking. And we're going to cut just barely into that groove. So you want a nice clean edge, and if it's not, then you know to change your blade. So I'm going to fold these bottom pieces up. And then you just take it off tiny, tiny bit. Just barely sitting to the other side. And I'll repeat on this side. This made it so my flaps, one is a little bit shorter than the other, but it also sits nicer because you can't do this after you put your pattern paper on. Angle my edges. Now, if for some reason, you know how sometimes your cutters, you get that, just take your bone folder on it, or you can take your fingernail file, smooth it out. So it looks nice. Now, my side is 2 5/8 and 2 5/8. Yours could be a little different, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be exact. That's the nice thing about this. Chipboard goes down first. Make sure there's nothing there, especially with these score tape sheets. ink at the bottom if you've inked your board. Yeah, keep your fingers back there. Don't let it touch until you're ready. And it wants to be in its new home. Furnish everything up. Check the fit because it's easier to adjust your corners now than after you get glue on there. Start with the top. Okay, we are now going to just kind of do a bit here so that you can see how our box will be coming together. And then you have a 2 3/4 by 6 1/2, and this definitely is going to have to be cut down, and I knew it because we cut the square out, but again, I didn't want to cut it beforehand. I mean, I didn't want to cut it too small because it's going to vary a little bit depending on how you hand cut. So it is, see, mine's not even 6 1/2, so I definitely will be taking this down to 6 3/8. Then we have a 2 3/4, so I'm going to take it down to 2 5/8. So 2 5/8 by 6 3/8 is what mine is going to be. Measure yours. Even if you cut it a little short, it's still going to be a-okay. You want it to fit pretty good in that perimeter. I need to take just a tiny bit more off. And that I'm happy with. Now I've got enough, it will bend. And it will be hidden. Back behind. But these are going to go on top. I like to make sure it's going to fit on both pieces so that we have a nice solid surface. And then this will sit right there. Then we're going to have a piece of cardstock that will go over. Now another option is you could wrap this, but again, you'd have to adjust your measurements. So I just opt to put the cardstock over the top. So once again on this little guy, what we're going to do is take our magic marker along these two short edges. Now, a lot of you may be thinking, well, why didn't we just build this out of chipboard? And if you are, this is the reason why. I wanted to bring the lightweight chipboard, especially to those that have arthritis, or you hate to wrap chipboard, but you love the projects and you want to create wonderful projects, but you don't have the hands, or maybe things you just don't like it, or you don't have access to it. Lightweight chipboard is pretty much accessible. We carry it at Country Craft Creations, but then it's also available on your cereal boxes. It's available on other items. This is a little bit heavier, of course, but that gives you some other options without having to get out the heavy chipboard. Let's go ahead. Oh, and one thing to remember. You've got to remember one of these, but we're covering them all in the same. But just so you know, you're going to have one side that's a little bit shorter. Actually, we're not covering them the same. One side is shorter. When your box comes together, you need the 2 3/4 inch on the inside, the fold. So I'm going to just take my clothespins to give you a visual here, because you might want to go ahead and mark. Oh goodness, where'd my clothespins go? You might want to go ahead and mark. So see how that's just a hair short? That's going to be considered my front. So I'm going to put an F, because that's what's going to be showing here. And then you really don't have to mark this, but this is the inside. You put an I on there for inside, if you need a visual, because that is the fold 2 3/4. So we're going to start with the front. So for the front, this is where we get to play with our pattern paper. Now you can look at your printouts, the printed photos, but we will be using this for the sides. This is my back piece. That's going to be for the lid. And then I used the back side. Oh. This piece went all the way across there. Now the front side is the roses with the washi tape here at the bottom. So I'm going to show you how we're going to cut that. And then I used the back side of this one. Now if you'll notice, this has that beautiful graphic here, so I came over here to this side. But if you like the butterfly side better, the choice definitely can be yours. But it is somewhat directional because the butterflies do go upwards. So starting with the front, I'm going to cut from this edge. I set it here to fit. From this edge over, I'm going to cut straight up. Now your box at this point, if you want to measure it, just to make sure yours, it should measure the same. Like I said, sometimes with handmade items they vary, but the box is now 8 inches. So everything we will cut, I'm going to be cutting in a 7 7/8 length. But I want to first cut my width. And now our width is 6 1/2. So you can consider this album to be 6 1/2 by 8. So I'm going to be cutting 6 3/8 by 7 7/8. So from the top down, I'm going to cut from this corner 6 3/8 in my cutter. And if you want to wait till after I cut it to show you. So we were able to preserve this one, which is just gorgeous. You can put that in your pile for later. Now, from the bottom up, I'm going to measure 7 7/8, because if I go from the top down, I'm going to cut my roses off. So I'll put this in the cutter, 7 7/8, and cut here. Now I have this perfect piece that can be used on one of our flaps cut apart, and we've preserved it. Don't you just love it? Now these flaps, if you remember, 2 5/8 wide and then 8 inches long. So we're going to 2 5/8 and 2 5/8. So about 5 1/4. If you want to get real on your measurements. Exact. I couldn't think for a minute. So 2 1/2 and 2 1/2 is 5. And then you have that little bit, so 5 1/4. But I'm going to cut a piece just for boo-boos from this edge at 5 1/2. Choose your sides, but cut it straight and long. That way we preserve this whole piece here. Now the reason I do that, I use the dolly cutter. It's quite large. And it makes it so much smoother and beautiful cuts but I can't do little cuts. You can't do the 2 5/8. Now the bigger piece, I'm just going to tuck away. Now I can cut this down, and it doesn't matter because I'm going to use the back side. I'm going to cut it to 7 7/8. Now, once again, you have this wonderful piece to use for a matting. Now with my smaller cutter, I will cut this at 2 1/2. And let's see, we need 2 of them, 1 for each flap. So on this, it's very important if you're doing both projects to really follow the measurements, so that unless you bought extra paper, this little piece, yeah, do not throw that away. Let's check our sizes. Isn't that just gorgeous? Love it. Now the bottom of the box does get matted, but we don't know which one yet is the bottom, because it depends on how you put it together, because there's no right way or wrong way. It won't matter what one goes on top. So we'll mat this later so that we don't do any, major mess ups here. And then choose your color of ink. I just got in some brand new ones, and this one is the Acorn, kind of dark maybe. So I think I'm going to use potting soil. You could use black with this. That would look really great. You could use a pink. I'll tell you, if I had a green, I definitely think I would use a green. So I'm going to change out this. And I've never really used this archival ink for inking, but I'm really liking it. But I don't like a big mess, so I'm going to turn this over. Oh, and then this is one of those things, when you turn it over, you might see, boy, that's really pretty too. Simple Stories has done an absolute amazing job with these papers. And then let's talk about ink for just a quick second. The archival ink is, I'm not an expert on inks, so I'm going to tell you what I think it is. It's permanent. We've used it in the multimedia on our canvases. It's more of a permanent. And so I like it just for this. Whoops. Whereas you might want to use just your Color Philosophy or your others. Whoops. Sorry about that. That are distress inks. Totally up to you. There's so many things that we could have and put our money in, and I'm finding that to have just the archival ink, I'm really liking it, because then I don't have to go looking for a permanent ink. I don't have to go looking for, I mean, it's good for everything. It's acid free, it's waterproof, so I'm happy. Okay, using your favorite adhesive, let's go ahead and put this down. I know, this is beautiful too. I will be making another box because I want to use the Authentic Easter. And I'm going to use Craft, and I think it's going to be such a cute Easter box. So not only do we give you, that's one reason I don't like to use pre-made albums in the projects for the Craftology box. It doesn't give you the alternative to create again. So when we do this and teach you to make your own, well, now you can go through and you've got a project that's not just one project. You now can use this for so many other creations, and it's very suitable. This is one of the favorite things. Actually, I made it bigger. Where this came from was from a big one that not really anybody saw, because I made it a long time ago for Authentic weddings. Oh my gosh, I will get the neighbors. Can you make me one of those wedding in a box? Because then the bride and groom can sit these on their mantle. So it just gives you so many opportunities for different projects when we teach you straight from cultivating creativity. And this is what I love to do. Isn't that just gorgeous? Can you smell the roses? I'm telling you. Now, the inside. The inside of your box is actually where we're going to come in now with the blue. So I used the blue, and then the blue and the red. So I used the white on the inside and the blue. And one reason I went with these for the inside is because there's going to be so many patterns on the inside. It just really helps to cut them down. Let's go ahead and cut this at 5.5 like we did before by 7 7/8, and then we'll cut to 2.5. We can't do this yet because we do have to put cardstock here, but we can do those side flaps. And here's what just happened. I wasn't paying attention to the one I grabbed. So mine will be white on that side and blue. It's reversed from the photo. I need to pay attention. I apologize. So the ones you're looking at in the photo are blue. But, oops, let's get a hold of that. We're going to go white. Ink the back side. I'm not going to go for a real hard distress look, and I want to keep the white clean. And I just got done saying, watch how you cut. Sorry, guys. Main thing is to get that, see that white core. So let's not put this down just yet. I want to check something with you, and you can check this now. That way, if there's a problem. Okay, see the black ink? Check it now, and if you have any spots you need to fix. You can fix them now. If once you get your paper on, you risk messing up your paper, then you won't be happy at all. Now, do remember, even though you have the instructions, you can, this is your project, and if you want the red, You can do the red. You can change this any way you like. But we do love to see your finished projects over on Scrapbookers of Country Craft Creations on Facebook, so be sure to show us. Then again, we will mat this after we've laid down a strip of our black cardstock that really cleans off that, because that's where our hinge is going. Now you're also going to see your box has some substance here. Now from my cutter, my fiskars, I need to smooth that off just a little. Even with the new blade, sometimes it happens. But clean it off, because it just gives your work such a nice finished look. Let's do the back side. Now again, with the back side, we're going to just repeat. The difference is I went all the way across with this one. So I'm going to just cut it. I'm going to cut this down to 8 7/8 to start with. Excuse me, 7 7/8. Again, wonderful piece, just tuck away. So I want it to look like it's still one piece. So we're going to start. I'm going to cut over here. So we know that this is 2 3/4. So I'm going to cut it at 2 5/8. This is 6 inches. So we're, no, 6 1/2. So we're going to cut this at 6 3/8. And because I said a variation, I always check, because we don't want to mess up our paper. So we're just going to keep moving down the line here at 6 3/8, which is before the half mark. So we want to keep it going so it looks like it's one piece. So we're going to just put this back into the box. It's 2 5/8. We'll just put our little strips in our pile that come in handy for matting. Now it looks like it's from the one, well, it is from the one sheet of paper. So I'm going to take these off, and if you need to do any cleaning up from the blade, definitely do it. Now this doesn't have as much white, so we're going to go ahead and just ink these edges up. Still, I'm keeping it somewhat clean. And of course, you might want yours more distressed. This paper could handle it. You do it how you want to do it. If you don't want your edges inked, that's okay too. Okay, let's put them down. Then I always spread when I use glue. Whoops, sorry about the noise. Because it's like wallpaper, you need to spread it around. Plus it'll lay flat. And I'm kind of just eyeballing, keeping it all in line, the top and the bottom. Inside. Now for the inside, on this one, okay, the pink went there. Let me not mess this one up. And then it was the other pieces of the blue from the front, so that it kind of coordinated. But what happened was, instead of the blue, remember, I used the white, so I'm reversing mine. I'm going to keep these flaps that same. Originally it's light blue, but because I was talking, not paying attention, so I'll do the white. And if you're using the correct color, you won't have to worry. And so I'm going to take this one, and you'll have this piece left. The only thing that this is going to change is my inside lid, possibly. I might have to use the pink. The reverse, because of the boo-boo I made. No big deal, actually. In fact, I will have to. I'm going to have to line it with the other piece of blue. And that's okay. It's just reversed. So again, these are two. These ones are 2 3/4. So I'm just going to cut this remaining piece down to 7 7/8. Then I'll cut my 2 5/8 of an inch pieces just from the whole piece that was left over. Then you'll have this little strip. Sorry, it's time to turn the heat off. The heat gets turned on, the heat gets turned off. Oh, and once again, check your black ink. If you need to do any touch-up, now's the time. For me, I'm just getting rid of that white edge. You're not going to totally get rid of it unless you really saturate it. And again, we don't want to mat the inside until after we put this together and put down the black cardstock where the hinge goes. And then when I did cut my matting, I'm going to cut it the exact same size, the width. Unless you're going to cover, you could put another piece of black inside of here, but just, I'm glad I brought that up because you're going to need to cut it the full width so that we cover our chipboard. And this width was 6 3/8. So I am going to go ahead and cut that. And we'll see. So that way, if you've done it like I have now, where you reverse this white and the blue, I'll know what we need for the lid exactly. So see, the light blue was on the outside, but it's okay. I'm going to cut this down to 6. Okay. So this front is going to be my light blue. The back, so this is my back, and it doesn't really matter. It's going to be the pink. But you'll see in the pictures, the flaps were light blue on both, but I've got to, we're going to do white, and then I'll do pink and blue. So I'm going to cut this down to 7 7/8, and then I'll cut my 6 3/8 of an inch piece. Oh. Yeah, go ahead and do it 7 7/8 because we have the black going down. And because this is not directional, you're going to be just fine either way. And you'll see it fits perfectly on top of that chipboard. But we don't want to put it down yet, but we want to put it to the side. Now, because, like I said, I won't have red on mine, because I've used it for the side flaps. Now I'll be choosing one of these others, and they both, I mean, it coordinates with the paper, so that turns out pretty good. So we're going to set our box aside for a moment. We're going to make the lid. Lid is the 7 7/8 by 5 1/8 of an inch piece. Now in your scoreboard, I won't tell you at the top because we're going to score all 4 of the edges the exact same way. So we're going to just go all the way around, and you're going to score 1 1/4, 2 1/2. Put my pin in my glue so we don't have that issue. So 1 1/4 and 2 1/2. Now, I like to cut everything out before I burnish it when I do this because it's just flat and it's easier to work on. Now, the main thing to remember is we need to do these short ends and the top short end. So this is where our cutting is going to take place. And on the score line, you're going to cut to that second score line. So now you've got this 4 out. We're going to cut away these 2 bottom ones. This one on the outer edge right here that I'm circling, we're going to remove this one. And when you turn it to the side, so here you are, I'm going to turn it to the side, and I'm going to angle in. So we do it all in one cut, and you're going to remove that piece. Then we're going to angle this outer edge. We're going to angle on the inside here. And you try not to pull because you don't want any stumpy looking pieces if you can help it. There we go. This bottom, and angle that. I'm going to angle it again on that side. I'm going to remove the bottom. Then I can cut straight up to my second score line. Angle right there. Angle here. I'm going to turn it to the long side across here and just angle that out. That's what that will look like. Okay, let's do that again. On this little guy, I just cut straight to the second score line. I'm going to cut this bottom 2 off. The inside one here, I'm going to angle it here. Turn to the long side and angle. Cut that off. And then on the inside, just take off that corner. It's very important that you keep this top straight. All the inside score lines need to be square. So your box is square. Okay. I'm going to angle this off just on the bottom. I'm going to angle this side. I'm going to remove the bottom 2 here, like so. Then I'm going to cut straight up. Go ahead and angle cut the inside there. Angle to the outside, excuse me, and turn to the long side and cut. Now you also might have your own routine of cutting that out, just so you come up with the same look here. Now let's go ahead and start furnishing our score lines. Now as you're folding over, you might see something like this is sticking out. So leave that fold, just leave that fold in, and now you can clean up the edge because you're looking for the nice straight edge. You don't want anything extending over. I'm going to turn this over and I'll clean up this side if I need to. Let's do the other side. Now sometimes this side will be a little bit shorter, and it's okay. That's not going to hurt anything because we fold those in. And I'm just going to open this up and burnish this little guy here. Excuse me. Now we can do, let's do it up. Get our 2 short sides done. And now these outside flaps. Now it's going to appear that pretty close to the bottom there, but once we put chipboard in there, it takes up some space, so these will fit nice. And you could always trim this bottom piece if you need before we put it together. Now I'm going to fold in this side because it looks like I do need to clean up this corner. I have a little bit sticking out on the edge, for instance. And that's what you're looking to get rid of, because that's what gives it a nice finished square look. Again, before we put this all together, we're going to lay down the chipboard. The chipboard pieces that you cut for your box, you have two that are 2 3/4 by 6 1/2. We already cut one down to fit the bottom. Excuse me, this is for our lid. Then you have two long ones, 6 1/2 by 1 1/8. They're going to fit inside of those score lines. Then you'll have the 2 5/8 by 1 1/8 that will go on each end. That one must be an extra piece. So I cut mine at 2 5/8, and here's the reason why. I forgot to tell you that. We're not putting these on first. We have to put these together. So when our box comes together, if it's 2 3/4, it's going to be pretty tight. But we're only going to put down these 3 to start, because these tabs will connect. Then we'll put the chipboard, then we'll fold these over the top to hide everything so it doesn't even show. So let's just start with our 6 1/2 inch pieces. Score tape, art glitter glue, your favorite adhesive will work. And I cannot wait till our temperatures in the spring come up to 40 at night and they'll start shipping again. I'm getting close. I'm going to need more art glitter glue. It just ruins it though if it freezes. Now, make sure you are inside of that score line because you have working parts here. And then before we go any further, we're going to fold this over and let's check the fit. Now, if yours is going to be, see how it might be a little close to the score line when you bring it up, you certainly can trim that off. But you don't want to trim a lot off because you want a nice hidden piece of chipboard there. Fold in the edges so you get a square edge. And even if it's crooked, it's not going to matter. You can trim a little bit off and then check for a better fit. It's easier than that to do that than to give you like 1/16 of an inch score marks, because not everybody has a 1/16 of an inch, or they don't like to work. I don't like to work in 1/16 of an inches. So I'd rather have you do the full scoring and then go back and trim. And it's a pretty much given that I need to trim all 4 of these if one didn't quite fit. I'm just going to lightly trim those 4 outer pieces. And then we're good. So we can put these down. We can even do the matting. We can mat here. We can mat here. And then we definitely want to do the outside. So the outside, what you're going to mat is the inside 1.5 inch strips, and we're going to mat our lid piece. And six and a half by 2 3/4. And for my lid, you'll notice it's the back of this piece, and then the front is just some hearts, which I'll get for you. I'll show you those in just a second. The inside was the coordinating cardstock, so this one was red, and you won't have enough if you cut yours like mine, so we'll be doing it with one of the other colors. And where'd my lid go? So I just cut from there, and we got that on. So I'm going to cut this down to my 6.5 by 2 3/4. Again, it's so much easier to mat it flat. So I'm going to grab this piece, which is the pink, and I'm going to cut it at 6.5, and the same thing, 2 3/4 for the inside. I'm going to use the darker pink. Now, for your 1.5 inch pieces here, I used these little hearts, and we only need the 1 1/8 and 6.5 and 2 pieces. So what I did is I cut 2 strips of this that are 1 1/8 of an inch. These are 1.5, 1 3/8. Let's double check our measurements so I don't tell you wrong. Oh, I did end up cutting it. Oh, it's 1 1/4. Duh. Sorry. So they are okay, they're 1 1/8, but your hearts are directional. So I'm cutting from the bottom. I'm going to cut 2 strips at 1 1/8 because we need 6.5. I'm going to have to cut from here. That flipped. So from this, I'll cut 2 6.5 inch pieces, and then we'll cut the little sides. Now your sides are going to actually be, because the inside here is 2 3/4. So we're actually going to cut 2 of these at 2 3/4. We're not doing it shorter like the chipboard. And the same pieces for the inside. So I have a big piece, then I have the smaller, but as you can see, it's not going to work, but this one will. But I'm going to have to cut a cut from my scraps. So I'll cut 1, 2 from this scrap piece. And you should have the exact same scrap piece out of either red or whichever color. Then I'm going to cut 2 of them at 2 3/4. Those are going to be our inside pieces. These 2 inside pieces I'll cut to 6 1/2. Okay, if we are all set, we can go ahead and do the inking. And separate these guys out. To be honest with you, I'm not inking these edges. I just don't want a lot of ink on them. And then I did add the lace, so you're really not going to see it. And this doesn't have a front or a back yet, but it does now because it'll be the direction that your writing is going in. So don't worry about if you're putting it on the wrong side, because we really haven't established until you put that paper down which one is front and which is back. Okay, inside, pretty much non-directional, so I did use that whisker blade. Okay, it should cover your chipboard. Should cover it perfectly because it's the same size, basically. Yeah, just a second to get that to move. And I didn't color the edges because this is going to come up. You're not going to see it. Then, let's do the outside. If you need to do that for a visual, you can definitely fold that in so that you can see the hearts will go down because they are directional. So this one will be upside down. That's going that way. But you're only doing that inside, oops, nice square piece. And we're just going to put that inside of our score lines. Again, making sure you're going the right direction because it's going to fold down. And the side. Again, directional. And let's double check our fit. Fits great. Clean up from the whiskers. I love the soft vintage pink and vintage colors. Okay, let's go to the inside. We can glue these down and go ahead and mat these now because our little pieces are going to hook here. So with our bone folder, we got some nice smooth edges. Whoops. And clean edges. See, mine's not cut straight, but it's not going to matter because we're going to put our pattern paper right on top of there. And I'm putting it towards the bottom so that it, when we fold this up, see how it comes together and you don't see any edges. So just bring it down to that bottom edge of where the chipboard is. And it should cover perfectly side to side. If you cut it 6.5. And we'll repeat the same thing. I could feel it that I didn't do the burnishing first. For this, I like to use some clothespins. If you have some, they're great tools. We're going to start with either end. It doesn't matter. But what we're going to do is add adhesive here and attach to the side. Now when you bring it up, okay, this will move around a little bit. By moving, I mean up and down, up and down. You can get it to fit. Or it might just fit nice and perfect for you. I'm just going to fold that over. It won't attach, but I'm going to hold that down. I'm going to do the other end. We'll come back to that side. And yes, we should have done the burnishing on all 4 sides, but it's still workable before we put it together. Jumped a little ahead there. My adhesive, checking the sides that they're going to be perfectly matched. Okay, now we're going to take this one off. See, I'm having to pull this one up. There we go. So it matches that side perfect. Okay. Let that side dry and we'll do this side. Now we can burnish those down. And we can add our chipboard. And again, keeping within those score lines. Okay, now we can add the pattern paper, and you've got a really nice firm lid. So we have our sides that we've already pre-cut. And then it covers it up beautifully so that you don't even see any of the construction. Making sure my papers are matching. Sliding that down to the bottom. Okay, the lid is finished. Let's put our box together. Now, before I put the box together, go ahead and you need to get any of your little scraps cleaned off so you don't pick them up in the glue, for one thing. Grab our box. Now, if you remember, this is our front, so it doesn't matter, but I will be putting the front on top of the bottom. Let's go ahead and burnish up these bottom pieces. And I've got a little piece that's sticking out here that I can see I need to clip off so that it looks nice. Same here, but do not cut any angles. So I'm going to put the back to my left. This is the front to the right. These are going to sit right on top of each other. So with the left hand piece, and your adhesive. Right up to the score line. Just checking it should be the same size. Now I'm just going light. I don't want to squish glue all over. Now I can really push down. front's to my right, so that's going to, the back's going to fold in, the front on the top. The reason the back folds in, we need to keep this. This is 2 3/4. 2 3/4. It's got to be 2 3/4 all the way around. You're going to put your box together and put your lid on. Pretty awesome, isn't it? Now, I notice mine is a little bit shorter on one side, but you know, it's okay. If that has happened to you, it happens. It's okay. So now on the bottom here, I did take this piece. Let me show you. This piece that was from the original. And I did use it here. And then I got to think, you know, that's just too pretty to use on the bottom of a box. So if you want to use it, I just cut it in here to fit. But I'm going to be using more of the solid. So you should have a piece, yeah, that's the same width because we did cut it for this inside. So I'm going to put the red on the bottom because I figure if I put the white, it's going to show a little more dirt. So I'm going to go with the red on this one this time. And I'm going to cut it at 2 5/8 by 6. For this one, we'll need to cut it about 6 1/4. So 2 5/8 and 6 1/4. That happens. It happens sometimes with these core papers. I just got a little nick there. So the back goes in first. Yeah, I'll have to get some red ink and fix that. So the inside now. So we have this section, and we can put our hinges right here. Let me show you. And our pattern paper. I just felt, oh no, duh. Here we go. And then you could just put your pattern paper. There we go. Yeah. Now you could just put pattern paper, but it's going to leave these raw edges. This is why we're going to be covering this area here with a piece of cardstock. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to add this with my score tape sheet. No, with my glue. Come on, wake up, Tammy. I'll be using the score tape sheet with the cardstock. And if you remember, we have already done the outside edges in black because we're not wrapping this. And try and get it pretty straight. Yep, we're pretty straight. We're good. Okay, the measurement for this. And basically, I'm going just off of this. I'm not too worried about this piece right here. So it's barely 6.5. And then all I need is, I want the 2 inches here and the 2 inches here. So I'm going to cut it. It's going to be 7 inches wide. So it comes up to here of a piece of black cardstock. So let me grab one so I can show you. And in your cutting, this is not on the cutting guide, because again, it was one of those pieces I didn't know if I could give you the exact measurement without messing it up. So you have plenty of scraps left over. And if you've already pre-cut, then you will have this. And I have one from when I cut mine that's already there. It's 6.5. And it was a leftover piece, but it is a little long because I don't want it to extend over. Chipboard is 6 3/8. So we're going to cut this 6 3/8 by 7. So 6 3/8 by 7. Now, when you place this on the chipboard, it should cover it side to side. Check it if you need to do any more trimming, because you don't want it to hit. You want it to just be there. Okay. Now, I like to use score tape. The reason I like to use score tape, it's more flexible than the glue. And if you get the glue inside of here, it can also be ugly. I've done it. It kind of wrinkles in there. So I'm going to be using the rest of my second score tape sheet. I mean, from the two score tape sheets. And I want to keep it on the inside just a little bit. I'm not, because it's just easier that way. Now, when cutting this, once again, I'm going to push it towards my blade, or you can actually put it in your cutter, but you're not going to get as close. Or you can use your score tape sheets, and you can use glue if that's all you have. Please don't feel like you cannot. Oh, well, did that not just like fit perfect? So what I'm going to do there, I'm just going to take my 1/2 inch, fill it in there. 1/4 inch, we're good. Just lost the pen to my glue on the floor again. I lose more of those things and they get shot backed up. Okay, let's grab our box. Let's remove the backing if you're using your score tape. Again, let me just do a dry, okay, making sure we're going the right direction. And I'm going to turn it this way. I'm not exacting it out 2 inches, just going to be laying it down here, just so we have got good coverage side to side. Everything in our crafting, doesn't it? Should cover. And then where it doesn't, we've already done the chipboard black, so we're okay. Now, using a bone folder that you know won't go through your paper, which is where the Fiskars comes in, I'm using my finger there just until we get it those fibers kind of broken. And now you can help it gently, gently. Don't push. Don't push in. Allow the box, there we go, to do its thing. And yeah, it's not going to go flat on this one because we don't have that spacing. And if we force it, you're going to really mess that up until it gets broken in. It'll get broken in and it'll soften up even more. But let it do it naturally as we're working. And we'll let those fibers find their home. Okay. Let's do another fit. See how nice and sturdy it feels. And it's a beautiful box because of the paper. Okay, let's go ahead with our matting. We'll go with the light pink and the lighter blue in the back. And I want to check the fit. We already knew it would work side to side. It's my length. So holding that in place, I'm going to bend it up. So definitely take it off. Now I've cut mine at 7 7/8. Just going to take probably a 1/16 of an inch off, just tiny, tiny bit. And when we place these down, so it's always best then to check down here at the bottom for your fit. That's great, because that is the most important. Isn't that is pretty too? We're going to stick with the lighter. So since the lighter's going to be on the front, I'll go ahead and ink the back so I don't make a mess on the front. I chose the lighter because I want the graphics and the brightness of the pattern papers to really shine. And this is just kind of like my, backdrop. And then we will cover that hinge area. And then we're going to make our hinges. Get everything cleaned off. So I'm starting at the bottom, working side to side so that it's covering the chipboard. Pretty, isn't it? The dot paper makes a beautiful backdrop. Again, I'm going to kind of start at the bottom here, covering the sides, especially my ink marks there. Okay, now for this piece, I did use red, but because I've already used my allotment of red here, so it is going to mean I may have some changes on the inside a little bit, but not a lot. And I'll let you know where those are. Because of my little boo-boo there. There's what I'm looking for, is this pink piece. So I'm going to go with the brighter pink. The original has red there. So our piece is going to be 2.5. Let's go 2.5 by 6.25. Now, if you're not comfortable with that, you definitely need to measure yours. Or cut yours just a little bit big and then trim from there. Okay, 6.25. We got some background noise tonight. Lots of giggling going on down the hall. Okay, I'm going to ink those edges. We're going to put that down. And if you've gotten this far and you're new to making albums, if you're experienced, you're probably way ahead and you went ahead and fast forwarded. If you're a beginner, I hope you're really proud of yourself, what you just created. I don't know about you. I'm that way. I look at it and I think, gosh, we just took bare materials and we created this. And you should be proud of your work that way. Okay, so our shell is complete. I'm going to put my lid on for now. That way it's got its shape. It's sitting nice, and we're going to set that aside so we can do our hinges. So how the video will work: we're going to do the hinges. We'll put them inside of our folio. Of our box. And so then this will be part 1. Part 2 will be the creating the pages. Otherwise, the video is going to be like 8 hours long. But and this will give you this to work on. Okay. We are starting with a piece of cardstock, so you're on the hinges. I even have your scoring. I'm going to show you a little trick while we're scoring. So if you haven't, if you have trouble with ending and beginning, this might help a little bit. But you want to go ahead and have the piece cut at 5 7/8 by 9.5 with the cardstock at the 9.5 inch at the top of the board. I'm going to do my first score mark at 1 3/4. Okay, that's my beginning. And a lot of times I'm just going along here scoring, and I'm like, I didn't stop. So I take my last number, which is 7 3/4, and you'll see it there on your paper. I'm going to score at 7 3/4, but I'm going to now score at 7 1/2. That is where I know I stop. So I've already scored at 1 3/4. Now I'm going to score at 2. Now here's the beauty of this. Do you see this section here? Between you have a 1/4 inch and a 1/4. All you have to do now is score 1/2 inch all the way down. 2 1/2, 3, 3 1/2, 4, 4 1/2, 5, 5 1/2, 6, 6 1/2, 7. Now I want to stop for a minute because I want to tell you something, and I'm going to be doing a video on this so that for those of you that have trouble. What we just scored here on this hinge, and you can make a note here, we just scored for 4 pages. So if you want to put down 4-page hinge, say you're going to make another album and your pages are 6. This is going to be perfect because we cut it at 5 7/8 by 9.5, and these are your score marks. But if you're going to make an 8-inch book, all you have to do is change your 5 to a 7, 7 7/8 by 9.5. Exact same measurements if you want 4 hinges. If you want 5 hinges, all you have to do, each hinge is half, because you've got to gusset. I never use 1/4. You just add 1.5 inches for the next set of hinges. But if you want to make a note here, you'll always have this as a guide to say, oh, okay, no matter how wide my pages are, it's always going to be 9.5. This is for four hinges, and it's going to be these score lines, score marks. So to give you a little tip there for those of you that are always trying to figure out what is what. This is what I use in length, 9.5. I just change the width for every single 4-page album I make. Okay? That way, if you keep a notebook and you just put 2 hinges, 3 hinges, 4 hinges, 5, I'm going to be doing the whole tutorial for that. And then you won't even have to, oh my gosh, what size paper do I need to use? Because I'm going to do it for you. Okay, I've done these 2 ends. I folded these in first. Okay, then I'm just going to turn it towards me. You have a 1/4 inch here. You have 2 1/2 inches. Let's pinch those together. And let's burnish them. Let's pick up our hinge. And let's push against that other piece, that other 1/4 inch score line to help form it, because 1/4 inch hinges are pretty hard to try and form straight. But if you do that, it will form them straight. Then you have to leave a gusset. So you're going to skip one and go to these next 2. I want you to pinch those together. And I want you to burnish those, because you're going to see if it's straight. You don't want any surprises when you're gluing. Then I'm going to kind of grab them and I'm going to push against the front score line and then the back score line so that it does it by itself. So now we need another gusset. We have 2 more. We're going to pinch them together. We're going to lay this flat and we're going to burnish. Now we need to burnish this score line and this score line. So I'm going to pick it up and I'm going to grab my pinch. I'm going to push down and forward, down and backwards. I need a gusset, and I have 3 hinges now. So I need 1 more set. I'm going to pinch that together right in front of my 1/4 inch, where that 1/4 inch is going to be. And I'll explain that if you're new. And then I'm going to pick it up, kind of flatten it out, and I'm going to push down and forward, down and back. Now, the reason I start and end with a 1/4 inch, and I've shown this quite often, do you see how this nicely sits? It's a package. Plus, do you see that space between this fold and here? Do you see all that space? That means I can put some embellishments here, because now I have room. If I take this hinge all the way to this 1/2 inch and I lay it across it, I'm butting up against this page. That means my flaps are going to get bent on this page. See, now I would never have been able to have all of these accordion files and the floral because I now have space. And I do it in every album, every tutorial, and you can see that there is space between here, and see my flaps are not getting smashed or beaten up with the other flap because there's room. Now, I've also had to take this unit out and rip it out. And now I can do that. I can save my cover. I can save my pages. So that is why I do it this way. You do not have to do it this way. You do it how you're comfortable, but if you're a beginner, I think that this is a lot less frustrating. And now you'll see your 4 hinges, and we're going to flip this over. Now, I do use art glitter glue again, but if you're using a score tape, you're going to have these flat surfaces and these valleys. See how they'll come together as one. And because we burnish so well, they're beautiful. So if you're going to do score tape, I want you to add score tape, skip, score tape, and then score tape, skip, score tape, or however you like. But with art glitter glue, and it lasts forever this way, I'm going to go down into this first valley. And then I'm going to just come up on the side here. I'm going to fold it over and squish the glue all over my mat. That's just what happens, but you want to get it to the very end, and that's okay. Yes, it's kind of messy with glue this way, but your hinges are going to be so permanent. I'm going to fold that backwards. See my 1/4 inch? You don't want to mess that up. You know what? I thought I keep turning that off. It must be hitting the button. Next valley. And you can keep a little bit away from that edge because you know it's going to smush out. Come up on the sides. Now just fold this whole thing back. Art glitter glue makes it look like you're shedding like a lizard. I'm really rubbing that because I want it down. I'm going to fold it backwards and I'm going to burnish it. Now I'm using the artisan cardstock. I know it will take it, so do check your cardstock. We need to skip this, and you're going to come down into the valley. Just go into the valley. Don't worry about the tops. Fold the whole thing over. Flatten it. Now push it back. You have one more valley. Taking the whole unit, fold it over. Now I turn it over and I just kind of fold these guys, my hinges. I'm going to burnish them. I'm going to burnish them going each way. Because like I said, check your cardstock if you're not using artisan. Make sure it can handle it. Now we're going to fold this back over and I flatten it. Just flatten it. It'll flatten. And you got to make sure you don't mess up that 1/4 inch. So I'm going to hold my fingers here and fold this over. Burnish it well. Let's see, it's pretty much established its spot. Our flap there. This is going to give also extra strength. Don't use any other materials. I've never had them come apart, so I did have them come apart with tie-back, and the tie-back did hold it in, but you know what? It's holding now by tie-back. Here's the thing. Once your cardstock's torn, your cardstock's torn. Yeah, tie-back's going to sit there, but you're still going to have torn cardstock. So I don't use it. For me, if you follow my tutorials and you know, I don't like all the extra steps. Unless it's an absolute step that I know is for the preservation or it really works. If it's just to add expense. But if it makes you feel good in your crafting, you use it and don't even listen to me, please. You have to do what you are comfortable with. But that is my reasoning for not using the tie-back. All right, let's just get everything smeared around. Bring it up. Now that's my little 1/4 inch, so I'm going to kind of clean that up. My towels are just really pulling some lint here and it's driving me crazy. So let's form that 1/4 inch because we need it. Now we're just going to really, what I'm doing is I'm breaking these hinges in. I want them broken as much. Okay, sorry, see it cut off. I didn't look up. It gives me hour intervals of recording. So we've already broke our hinges in as much as possible. And I do use art glitter glue to attach the pages. And we're going to open the book, nice and flat surface. and it will sit centered. So you can either mark yours or you can eyeball it. I'm just going to eyeball it, but you do need to have that. It's almost not quite a quarter of an inch, but all the way on the top and bottom. Then just eyeball your sides. Then your favorite adhesive. Now I've got some dots here that I'm using as my on the left hand side that just happen to be in the right placement. Okay. Now I'm going to use a bone folder that I know I won't stab my hinges with, and I'm going to burnish that on the inside. Or your fingers, whatever you like to use. Okay, let's pick up our box. There's your hinges on the bottom. And there is part one, creating the box for our mini album. And so part one and then part two will be creating the pages and everything else. So I did it in 2 parts. Otherwise, the video is going to be over 4 hours, almost 5 hours long. And this way it gets it up faster for you. So you can get started and get working as soon as your Craftology box has arrived. See you in part 2.